For people who don't know why street defibrillators are urgently needed, here's a video of information given to my village of Clavering by the South Western Ambulance Service. Cardiac arrests are one of the biggest causes of premature death in Britain, which could affect any of us. Having a defibrillator in your street makes sense, because action is needed in minutes, or we would be dead.
Preamble, I've basically introduced myself, Richard Sibley from Clavering, with an intent to look into how we can get defibrillators to help everybody in the right places and stop so many people dying of cardiac arrest. So, thanks for coming. My first question is, why are you calling for more defibrillators in all areas? It's on your website.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you put that on there? Could you explain how?
Because evidence-based, they're proven to save lives, and the more defibrillators we've got, the more chance we've got of reversing people in cardiac arrest. Yeah. Realistically, for every minute it takes us to get a defibrillator to somebody in cardiac arrest, we lose 10% chance of that patient's survival.
Yes.
So for somebody in a shockable rhythm, every minute it takes that defibrillator to get there, 10% chance of their life is gone. So if we get a defibrillator within 3 minutes of those category of patients, there's a 70% chance that they'll live.
Yes.
Outside of that, if we get it there in 7 minutes, there's a 70% chance of dying.
Yeah. So basically, on your website, you're saying to all sorts of people, businesses, individuals, the NHS can't provide defibrillators everywhere. We're all taxpayers, we'd have to pay more anyway. So swings and roundabouts, it's best for us all to say it's a self-help.
So it's not about the NHS providing defibrillators in the same way it's not about the fire service providing fire extinguishers. This is a provision that the community can help with themselves.
Sensible provision.
Yeah,
right.
So it's not the NHS's responsibility to provide a defib. But the more there are, obviously the better that is for patients.
Yeah, fine. Right, next question is it more likely, the reason I want to say to my neighbours is, look, we've got to take action ourselves if we think we need to, and it's sensible. For the amount of money that we share the cost of a defibrillator, saving going out to the pub one night probably cover it. So, but in reality, if more homes are being built in every area, unless the NHS is funded more, is it likely that more public defibrillator, what I'm trying to say is, it's going to be more difficult to cover more houses, isn't it? And the more and more houses are built, unless the resources are there for more responders. So, do you agree that that's another good reason for us doing something ourselves about it?
I would agree that any community should support themselves in every way they can, regardless.
Yeah.
And with the financial constraints every public sector is under at the moment, the more a community can do to support itself in that way, then the better.
Right.
The NHS isn't there to provide defibrillators. We need to get that clear. Okay.
Yeah.
The NHS isn't there to provide defibrillators. It's there to provide a provision of care which we're commissioned by commissioners to deliver, and we do that. This is to supplement what we're already able to achieve. And the more defibrillators we can get, then the more chance people have got of surviving.
Yeah.
So defibrillators aren't a cure or a panacea. They're not going to save every single person that goes into cardiac arrest. But as part of a tool in a chain of survival, they're absolutely vital.
Fine, thank you. Would you say that Clavering is as capable as any other community to put this plan into action, getting defibrillators? I mean, is Clavering, in your view, any different to any other district?
No, any community can benefit from having defibrillators, regardless.
Right.
It's all about where they're sited, how they're used, and how accessible they are. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Any community can have. In an ideal world, we'd have a defibrillator every 200 metres. That's the reality of the situation.
Now you touched on the subject of the distance and the availability close enough. Could you explain why the 200-metre rule is applied? In other words, if a defibrillator is further away from your victim, the advice from the ambulance service and all the statistics is that 200 metres is and beyond. Beyond 200 metres is too far. It would take too long to get to the box, get the defibrillator and get back and shock the victim. Is that correct?
So, kind of, but you're missing another key point. So the community has to support itself.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what it doesn't do is stop anybody in the community who knows where that defibrillator is going and getting that defibrillator outside of 200 metres. And we're only talking about public access defibrillators now.
Yes.
Okay. So if that defibrillator sits outside of a 200-metre ring fence, we, as a service, we won't tell the caller that defibrillator is 300 metres away. Okay. Now, there's a couple of reasons for it, but if we break it down initially, to walk potentially 200 metres there, 200 metres back, will take generally 4 minutes. Okay. The VF phase of a cardiac arrest, which is the shockable phase that we're looking at converting with a defibrillator, will last generally no more than 4 minutes. Okay, so outside of that, evidence-based would suggest that it's far more beneficial to stay with the patient and push on their chest and give CPR to buy time for somebody else to bring that defibrillator to us. The other reason we don't tell people is because at the time somebody goes into cardiac arrest, if we're asking somebody in that household to go and get that defibrillator, that's somebody that they care about. That's somebody's wife, husband, son, daughter. That's somebody that really matters to that individual person. And the last thing I want to do is ask somebody to get in a car and drive 2 miles down the road to get a defibrillator and put anyone else at risk. Okay, so first and foremost, it's about providing benefit to the patient there and then, and not being sidetracked by a machine that people think will cure everything. And secondly, it's about the safety of everyone else that's involved. So we need people to stay there, and we need people to push on the chest to buy time for somebody else to bring that device.
It's
200 metres.
Your experience.
Nationally, other services have slightly different variations, but the majority will have a 200-metre ring fence for exactly that reason.
Thank you.
It's about patient safety and public safety.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is if there was 2 of you there and somebody's had a cardiac arrest with the patient, if they knew there was a defibrillator half a mile away, one person was prepared to go and get it. And the other
absolutely. We won't tell you about that, but as a community, it's down to you to publish where your defibrillators are. Make people aware in your community where that provision
is.
Because
in this village, I've seen that happen.
And that's why, as a service, we are absolutely against lock cabinets. Absolutely against lock cabinets.
When you say lock cabinets, the one outside the village hall here has got a touchpad.
Yep, so it's a locked cabinet.
But that's not the knowledge of the numbers to touch are not in public, are they? You have to get that from the 999 call.
But you'll only get that if the patient's within 200 metres.
Right.
So you wouldn't lock a fire extinguisher behind a cabinet and then ask to phone the fire service when somebody has a fire in their property. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the trouble is the cost, isn't it, of that?
Right, can I bring the meeting to a...
Okay.
You've got to focus on the questions.
Okay.
You can come in later if that's all right. Thanks for interrupting.
Okay.
Basically what we're coming down to is within 200 metres, it's virtually street by street in any community. We want to take real action to really be sure we got the option, and only the option, of trying to save somebody with a cardiac arrest, in case the ambulance or the responders can't get there in time with traffic, etc. It makes sense for us to say, how much is it going to cost in our street or close by this street? So that's why I decided to ask what people think. So the next question really is, what you're saying really is, we are increasing our risk if we don't go ahead with getting defibrillators. We've saved the money that we could have spent on a defibrillator, but we haven't reduced our risk.
Yeah, so you're not increasing your risk, you're just not decreasing the risk.
Right, that's
so your risk is here, regardless. Every one of us in this room is at risk of cardiac arrest.
Yes.
It doesn't discriminate against age, background, ethnicity.
No.
If you're going to have a cardiac arrest, you'll have a cardiac arrest.
Any age.
You haven't increased that risk by not providing the defibrillator. You've just not reduced the risk of being able to cardiovert somebody who has had a cardiac arrest.
Right. As my ambition is to say that in Clavering, if we make a real decision about this and we do the right thing, if we decide to, and we install defibrillators, I'd like to say that Clavering could put itself on the map and lead other villages, towns and cities to do the same. Because without it, we're going to risk our lives and we'll save money, but we won't have made the right decision. Do you think, in my view, if I went to an average estate agent and said, if every house in our street was covered by defibrillators, in your view, would it go on the particulars to say that this house, if you buy this house in this street, you're going to get the benefit of a defibrillator that's set up, run with the ambulance service and the 999 system, it's NHS approved. would that put the value of the property up slightly if it, or would it help to sell the property if it was covered by a defibrillator?
I think that's a question for an estate agent rather than me.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can answer that one, but it's just one that I wanted to throw in there, because to me, it makes sense.
You might then be able to advertise as a community that you're cardiac safe, and promote it internally that as an area, Clavering is cardiac safe in as much as we have a provision of defibrillators that will cover every property. That would be then for estate agents to try and make more money out of it.
Yeah, of course. Look, point I'm trying to get is there a community in Britain that you know about that leads the way on defibrillators? Is there a leading light that we could copy? Or would we be the first if we did it properly?
Well, it depends on what you classify as properly. There's a community in Devon.
Well, with your approval. If we worked a plan with you that you approved of and covered all our streets and all our neighbours, would that make us
so we can work in
first
partnership?
in Britain?
No. There are other areas that are
Could
cardiac
you
safe.
give me the names of the districts, because we might be able to learn from them? I'll do that later on.
Yeah, and maybe I can share the area and then you can contact
Yeah,
people.
we will do that, right.
Yeah.
Has anybody had VAT-free defibrillators by going through a company that provides them, donates them? Is it possible to save the VAT?
So the way you could save the VAT, my understanding, and I'm not a tax man, but my understanding of it is if I was to set up what you're trying to achieve in this community, I would probably set up a registered charity and call it something like Clavering Defibrillator, whatever.
Yes.
Register yourself as a charity and then you can claim the VAT back on your purchases that way.
We could use a charity that's already set up, couldn't we? I'm sure we could find one. Right.
I think you can do it via the parish council as well. They can claim.
Yeah, well, that makes more sense. Right. Would you, in your view, this is not putting you on the spot, do you think you'd rather have 13 defibrillators, as I've indicated on that map there, which puts every defibrillator across Clavering within 200 metres roughly? Would you rather have 13, even if the people didn't initially fund the boxes but they had the defibrillator? Would you rather have 13 defibrillators in Clavering or 6 with a cabinet? Please give me your honest opinion.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand.
If we only had 6, they would be outside of the 200 metres for some of the properties.
Okay, so again, the 2
If we had 13, we would give them within 200 metres, even if they were held in a cabinet in somebody's garage side with people having keys initially. If we said to you, we will attempt to get more money in, we will put them in a cabinet eventually, but initially we'd rather have 13 across the village.
So as a community, it's really important. Firstly, you get your head around the 200 metre ring fence. Okay, the 200 metre ring fence is an internal metric that we use to tell somebody about a defibrillator. It doesn't stop you in the community going outside of it. Okay?
No.
So the 200 metres matters to me, Kim and Anna, as to where we ask our dispatchers to tell you there's a defibrillator. If it's 201 metres, if it's 200.5 metres, we're not going to tell you about it. That doesn't stop you as a community knowing where it is and getting it. Just make sure you're very clear in your head that's what happens. Okay?
Right. Okay.
Outside of that, I will not list on our 999 system a defibrillator that's locked in somebody's garage that somebody has to access somebody's own personal property to go and get.
But if I said everybody in my row can go to a cabinet on the side of my garage that I put in there specially with a little insulated box with everybody having a key, they could come without my permission, walk to the cabinet and get it and go home.
So if you're giving everybody a key, why put it in a locked cabinet?
Yeah.
Well, so that people outside the road can't get to it. You know, villains.
How many
if it was
crime rate in
open,
Clavering, is it that high that you have to lock a provision of care to save somebody's life?
I'm only saying that the public would probably question.
Okay, I'm not going to get into an argument about locked cabinets.
I'm not.
Okay?
No,
As a community,
Yeah.
you can lock as many defibs away as you want. You can do that, that's your right as a community.
Yeah.
I will not list on the system any defib that's locked on somebody's private property.
Yes.
Okay? That's the way it is. There is no negotiation with that.
Yeah,
That's a
fine.
rule set around our
I
service.
appreciate it.
And it's for innumerable reasons which should be plainly clear.
Yeah.
But think about what you're saying,
Yeah.
Rich, think about what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're going to give people a key to open a locked cabinet when somebody dies in front of them. and you're going to give people keys.
I only bring the question up because I'm sure among this community there's going to be somebody saying, well, if I'm going to pay £40 towards a defibrillator, how do I know somebody from Bristol don't come wandering in and just take the defibrillator and go and sell it on the black market? Then I've got to pay another 40 quid to buy another one. This is the problem, you see.
Okay.
It's people's heads. We've got to work within people's heads to get this approved, or we won't get defibrillators.
But if in this room you don't believe in what we're saying,
I do
you'll
believe.
never convince other people. So across the whole of our trust, bearing in mind we cover from the Isles of Scilly right way up to the top of Gloucester and pretty much everything in between. So we cover 20% of mainland Great Britain. Okay.
Yep.
The majority, if we've had defibrillators stolen, okay, they've been in locked cabinets. If somebody wants to get, if somebody from Bristol has nothing else to do and they want to come and steal your defibrillators from Clavering,
That's a slur on Bristol, isn't it? I came from Bristol.
they will quite happily break into a locked cabinet.
Yeah. Point taken. So for the film, I'm going to refer now to a price that was quoted by the ambulance service. We could have a box that would be 4 years supported. It gives the cabinet and the defibrillator and as many pads. When you shock a person, you have to change the pads because of the electric shock going through it. So you change the pads and the batteries need to be checked and changed periodically. But for around about £1,800 plus VAT. So if we scrap the VAT somehow by getting it donated through charity, we're talking about £1,800, and that gives 4-year cover with the approval of the ambulance service and linked into their system. And that presumably includes a touchpad.
No, because we don't have locked
You
cabinets.
don't. So hang on, sorry, my apologies. It was explained to me that this system, this £1,800 offer, includes, if it's stolen, it's replaced automatically.
Yeah. So
It's insured, as it were.
So what's really important for me, particularly if it's on camera, is we are not a salesman, we're not a sales team.
No.
I don't care, genuinely do not care where you get a defibrillator from.
No.
You could buy it from Mike the Butcher for all I care, it makes no difference, okay? The provision of having a defibrillator is what's important, and where it comes from me is irrelevant.
No.
I'll list any type of defibrillator from anywhere, provided it meets the governance arrangements of where it's sited and it's being checked, and then you report it to us. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
whatever provision you decide to go for me, brilliant. You've got a defibrillator to cover your community.
Yeah.
As a service, we offer a supportive package. So we don't sell you a defibrillator. This is the other thing that's really important. It's our property.
It's let to us.
You
yeah.
buy a supportive package for the 4 years, whereby we will provide a defibrillator, a cabinet, the signage that goes with it, and an annual awareness session where we come into your community and we train as many people as you want to get into your village hall, and we do that every year for 4 years. If the defibrillator is stolen, we put another defibrillator back in under that cost, so there's no other cost.
Yeah.
If the defibrillator is used, we replace the pads for you free of charge, and the battery lasts 4 years, but if the battery runs out before that, then we'll come and put a new battery in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mentioned, thank you, Richard. I mentioned this offer because I thought it would cover the risk of theft, which was the issue I think lots of people would worry about. What happens if we pay our 40 quid or whatever and it's gone? But under this particular scheme, the risk is taken, and as Richard says, it's accessible to all. If a dustman has a cardiac arrest and their mates know that there's a defibrillator in Dunsters Road, they can go to the cabinet, it's not locked, it's accessible, and it can be used immediately. And if neighbours come out and help, so much the better.
And
so
we would only
at
cite
least
that,
covers the theft, doesn't it?
but that wouldn't be cited in somebody's private address.
There would have to be. We've got a list of.
So generally we have sites like village halls, which I see you've already got one here, which isn't a problem, on the side of a shop. To actually run the cabinet is about £8 a year to heat the inside so that the gel on the pads are at the optimal temperature for when we do it. It's a trickle charge to heat the pads. That's all the heating element is for. Okay, so we generally look at or telephone kiosks. People have taken over telephone kiosks and placed the defibrillator in there. Pubs. So look at the hub of the community and look at what options we've got to site on the back of that.
Yeah. Well, in Clavering, I got several locations that would be prime candidates, like the Scouts Hut, telephone box in High Street, the Free Church, the Catholic Church, St Barnabas Church. There are various locations which we could provide. It's not in somebody's garden, but we've got to try and find other answers, because some of the places don't have places that you could site them like that. So we've got to try and find an answer either on the edge of there are pieces of grass or council areas around the district we could probably look at with the right permission. It was raised earlier. What about on the side of a telegraph pole? Is that possible, do you think, or has it ever been done?
I've not known it.
It's the power supply's the problem, isn't it?
But as long as a house...
The cabinet width-wise is probably maybe that wide, and it's a fair old chunk of steel, so it's how you would secure it to that as well.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay, so the defibrillator checks itself. It checks itself, okay? So St John Ambulance, if that's where you got your defibrillator from, are absolutely correct. The pads have a finite date on them, so the pads will run out of date, okay, which are a couple of years. At some point, somebody will miss the fact the pads have gone out of date. The machine checks itself, it has temperature sensors, it has numerous things that it tells you, I'm not at the optimal point now to save that patient's life. The guardian or guardians are responsible then for making sure it's operable at the point that is needed by doing daily checks. So all you've got to do is walk past it. If it's not beeping, if the disc is green, that's your check done. There's nothing more onerous than that. I need a monthly assurance that that's happening if I'm to list it on the 999 system, because there is nothing worse than asking somebody to go and get a defibrillator for somebody who's gone into cardiac arrest and that defibrillator is not working.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's worse than not having one.
We're here to make sure we have a system that works. And anyway, you've explained that, and I appreciate that very much.
Okay.
Anybody else, any more questions for camera, please? Because while they're here, they've come all the way from Exeter.
Yeah, have you?
Thank you very much indeed. Right, any more questions, please?
Before we award the equity card.
Where did you get the amount of £40 from?
It was when I decided a couple of years ago to look into defibrillator. I researched everything and everybody said get one from the St John Ambulance, and it cost me about £1,300, including the VAT, and with an extra set of pads. They didn't explain that the pads go out of date. I'm not knocking them. I bought it thinking I would go to my neighbours and say, I'm going to give you this one. I'm going to site it somewhere on Dunsters Road. And I thought that would spur them on to, with me, collect some more money to buy another defibrillator for the next street to us, thinking that a round-robin system would give everybody a free defibrillator, but put the onus on them morally to create some more money through selling things or collecting, to give another free defibrillator to the street next to them. So it would go around the district as a free round-robin gift to each street, starting off with Dunsters Road, with me giving one. But that's why I bought it. I wanted to look into it, and for family reasons I didn't have the time to proceed with that, and so this is the first time I've really tried to go further now and say, because people told me initially, look, why are you making it complicated with a round-robin system? Just say to your street, do you want to have one? Shall we all put our hands in our pocket and buy one for the street? So on that basis, that's why we're here today. That's why the good ambulance people have come to explain the importance, especially of the 200 metres rule.
So, Rich, before you go again, we're going to go to another meeting in a minute.
Sure.
So the bits that you're going to do on camera without us, brilliant.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions before we go and get a cup of tea and a couple of paracetamol?
It looks brilliant. That interplay looks really good. This will all be edited down, obviously, to just a few minutes.
Lots of defibrillators are funded by collecting, like the Lions and Round Table. you know, various
It's just curious how the ones in Yatton.
the Masons, you know, all sorts of groups that collect
Via
money.
the parish council.
Yeah,
There's lots of different ways to raise money, and if it's something you're absolutely set on in the community, then look at every avenue of raising money
That's
to
what we
bring
do,
in.
yeah.
Look at everything. Get the schools involved, get the scouts involved, get the
Village
WI
fates.
involved,
Yeah.
get the fates involved. Make a big thing about promoting Clavering as being cardiac safe. Make that a charity of choice or the annual charity. Make it a massive thing.
My hope is to make it a national thing by saying each street, each village, each town should look to itself to make sure that you've got provision. It's easier for me to persuade a bunch of neighbours than it is to go to all sorts of different groups doing fundraising. If we can't say put our hand in our pocket for 40 quid instead of going to the pub, well, to me, it's why go the hard way? Why don't we just make that decision?
With regard to your point about it being on private property, presumably something like a school, although it is...
So maybe private address rather than private property. So going on to somebody's house
Is a no.
is a no.
But a school?
But a school would be then, you've got the governance around who's going on to a school grounds, and if you put it on the side of a school at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and the kids are in the playground, the school are going to be reluctant to let anybody who's not been vetted onto their premises when they're locked at that point when kids are playing in the playground. So what initially seems a very simple concept of let's put defibs on the side of buildings, needs just a little bit more thought about where it's going to be sited. It's not insurmountable, it's not a massive problem, just don't go for the carte blanche approach of peel a sticker off and slap it on the side of the wall. Get buy-in from it.
Come and have your paracetamol. Sorry if I gave you. These just shaved all your head off on the occasion.
It fell out. I had hair when I came in, Rich.
Thank you. Thanks for. Thank you. I say to you.
Hey,
Thanks for
good time.
coming.
Thank you.
Well done. I appreciate it
Take
very
care.
much.
After watching this video, each of us, I'm sure, must play a part to avoid early death, tragedy and misery. We must take this very seriously. The money involved is peanuts to save life. If community by community we install defibrillators ourselves, Britain everywhere will become the cardiac envy of the world. Because we'll have life-saving defibrillators within 200 yards in every street in the UK. Thank you for watching, and I hope you take the information to heart and do something about it with your neighbours. Thank you.